Doyle's fingerprints are all over this, because this debacle was really starting to make him and Tom Barrett both look ridiculous. It's becoming a PR nightmare for them. They were both made accountable for their past sins. Doyle for the sin of stealing $1.3 million or $1 billion from the transportation fund and putting off the rebuilding of the Zoo Interchange. And Barrett for being pro-car, anti-road, and also being complicit in putting off the rebuilding of that Zoo Interchange, claiming those bridge repairs could wait. This crumbling bridge caught these men with their pants down. And now they just hope that it blows over and it doesn't linger as a campaign issue. But we voters shouldn't let them off the hook for it. Which brings me to Mark Neumann. And folks, it's just time to be blunt. As a conservative talk show host who will do Republican events and fundraisers and who communicates with candidates and their supporters and who expresses opinion not only on the general election races but also on inter-party issues, I, in this role, sometimes find myself in uncomfortable positions. And as the fall elections approach, I'm just going to have to be blunt on a number of these races, even if I offend certain people. But especially in an election year like this happens, because sometimes there are people who I like personally, who I would even call friend, who I have to admit I just don't support them as a candidate. I just don't think they're the best person for the job. And I have already realized that I'm going to have to just admit already in April, Mark Neumann's just not my guy. And everyone in the audience, I think, knows that I'm a Scott Walker backer, and I have been for years, well before Mark Neumann ever got into this gubernatorial race. And yes, if Mark Neumann beats Scott Walker, well, of course I'd support him over Tom Barrett. But what I'm realizing is I've been playing it fair. I've been trying to keep it fair for both GOP candidates for governor. But I realize I'm just going to have to blast Neumann when I think he's wrong, and several instances now have passed in which I just think he's been wrong. I have to call him out on these things. His response today in the Journal-Sentinel in trying to take the high road on the Zoo Interchange political flap is just crap. The Journal-Sentinel quotes him. Mark Neumann, Republican candidate for governor, said Thursday that he is steered clear of finger-pointing over the Zoo Interchange because it wouldn't do anything to get the bridge fixed. Neumann told an audience at Marquette University Law School that he didn't think the critical exchanges between Milwaukee County Executive Scott Walker and Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett were useful. Neumann said he thought a better dialogue would have been a debate over how to solve the problem and address similar problems in the future. Sorry, wrong. Very high-minded and collegial of you, Mr. Neumann, but wrong. The back and forth over who's responsible for the Zoo Interchange crumbling is important. It's vitally important. It's not just bickering. It's not finger-pointing. It's important. This is an important discussion. It lays the groundwork for a discussion on who we are going to turn Wisconsin's infrastructure over to. Who voters of this area are going to elect as the next governor. We are in November going to determine which of these men is going to be in charge of Wisconsin's future transit needs and priorities. And therefore, what transit priorities we're going to follow. What are Wisconsin's transit priorities going to be? Are we going to elect someone who realizes our roads and bridges are crumbling and we just recently got a D+ rating on our roads and something needs to be done? Or are we going to elect a guy who is still blinded by the choo-choo? Oh, and which way are we going to go? This is very important. And it's important to point out that on Doyle's watch, he raided the transportation fund of money that should have gone to bridge and road repairs. It's important to point that out. It's important to say he pushed off repairs on this interchange. It's the busiest interchange in the entire state. It's critical not only to a lot of commutes in the morning and again in the every afternoon. It's critical to all sorts of commerce. This traffic, it's a major hub that connects Illinois to the Fox cities and points north. It's a major hub that shouldn't be ignored, and it shouldn't have been ignored and allowed to crumble. Yes, we should be pointing fingers at the people who allowed it to crumble. It's also important to make it known that as that bridge was crumbling, Tom Barrett was complicit in those decisions to put off reconstruction. He's against widening I-94. He's philosophically anti-car and anti-freeway. This is important stuff. These are important distinctions to draw between Tom Barrett and Scott Walker, or Barrett or yourself, Mr. Neumann. It's vitally important that voters in fall know that while the Zoo Interchange was crumbling, Jim Doyle and Tom Barrett were ignoring it and were instead focusing all of their attentions on bringing us choo-choo trains that no one will ride. This is important stuff. This is a terribly important debate for southeastern Wisconsin. Are we going to spend $1 billion on a train between Milwaukee and the Dane County Airport that no one will ride? Are we going to dedicate $15 to $20 million each and every year from here on out for that blasted train? And are we going to be taking that money out of this transit fund when it's money that should be used to repair roads and bridges? This is all important. The argument over who screwed up and who did what over these last years is important. It's not petty finger pointing. And to write it off as such indicates that Mark Neumann doesn't really get it. And I'm done holding back. Newman's campaign has done a couple of things now that just don't square with me. A couple of underhanded attacks on the Walker campaign that were unfair and uncalled for. When Neumann was called on them, he backed off, made excuses. There was an email out that his campaign was putting out last week. Oops, just a mistake. Junior staffer, no big deal. Ridiculous email that claimed Newman's going to remain in this race because Walker's going to run for lieutenant governor. Walker will bow out of the governor's race that he's leading and run for lieutenant governor. Ridiculous. But it was sort of put out there by the Neumann staffers, just a little. Junior staffer, small, no big deal. And then before that, he attacked Walker on job creation in the most strident, strongest language. It was so jarring to me, I invited him onto my program to further explain it, make your case. He totally backtracked. Wouldn't level with the same charges, didn't want to talk about it, wanted to parrot his job creation talking points, talked around it. What type of governor are you going to be if you're tough on paper and then weak face-to-face? I mean, now he's going to give Doyle and Barrett a pass on the Zoo Interchange, take the high road. We don't need another Republican who is going to let these Democrats off the hook. We have the accomplice media for that. How quickly this story turned around. What you're seeing today, the Zoo Bridge is fixed. Oh, it's wonderful. Oh, it's ahead of schedule. Kudos. Oh, how did they get it done so fast? No. Let Doyle and Barrett off the hook for bungling this issue? No. The press shouldn't, but certainly a Republican candidate for governor shouldn't. And I've got to call him on it. This stance, I'm not going to be involved in the finger pointing, absolute wrong stance. That's not very constructive. You're damn right it is. Doug in St. Francis, you're on News Talk 1130 WISN.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I agree with you. Newman's got to get out of the way because we have to get this party out, the Democrats out that do not have their eye on the ball at all. We've got our own Badger care, so we have our own medical care. We've got our own global warming out there. We're concentrating on this choo-choo train and not on the things we have in hand, which is a crumbling infrastructure that's vital to our survival. And
we're arguing over the very fate of this state. Thanks for the call. I don't think Neumann has to get out of the way. Stay in the race if you want. I encouraged him to run. Hey, there were Republicans saying he shouldn't run, he's going to screw things up for Walker. Hey, it's a free country. If you want to run for an office, you can run for an office. But now there's a matter of how you run the campaign, one thing. Whether or not you're going to do it honestly and above board or not, attack your opponent and then back off the minute you're called on it. And then there's the matter of, what types of things you're going to decide are campaign issues or not. This is another sort of attempt to sort of, poop on Walker's head while they're arguing over these unimportant things. These are of vital importance. And either he doesn't get the issue or... I don't know what the alternative. He just misunderstands this issue? Just wants to poop on Walker's shoes again? I don't know. I don't get it. But that statement, patently ridiculous.